Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a deeply personal and honestly, incredibly powerful review by creator Molly House. She's sharing her thoughts on a book that fundamentally changed her life, Megan Devine's transformative work on grief, called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. If you've ever experienced profound loss, or, even if you've just felt completely unequipped to support someone who has, this explainer is going to break down exactly why this specific book is resonating with so many people. It's really way more than a book review. It's a look into a literal survival guide. Let's start right here with this quote because it perfectly grounds everything we're about to talk about. Molly puts this heartbreaking reality right out there up front. She was desperately searching for a lifeline after losing her daughter. She points out that in those early days, she was just grasping for anything to help her figure out how to simply survive that overwhelming shock. She needed something to help her understand what was happening to her, to know she wasn't alone, and most importantly, to validate that she wasn't going crazy. Because as she experienced firsthand, the people around her just weren't acting the way she expected them to, and she needed answers. So, to make sense of all this immense pain and share what she found, Molly actually narrowed down her countless notes into 5 core reasons why this book is an absolute must-read. Here's a quick map of those 5 reasons: real and raw honesty, the history of grief, a new model for healing, surviving over time, and educating the outside world. We're going to use these to structure the review, starting with our internal processing of loss, and then we'll move outward to society as a whole. Moving right into that internal journey, let's look at how the book addresses the raw and often super isolating reality of experiencing grief from the inside out. Molly's first major takeaway zeroes right in on the author's tone. Megan Devine does not hold back. She is completely real, raw, and honest. Devine shares her own personal experiences with grief directly, and that sets a tone of deep empathy. But she doesn't stop there. She provides a ton of examples from other grievers going through really similar situations. For Molly, this was just incredibly validating because the examples are so relatable. When you're grieving, finding a resource that doesn't sugarcoat the pain, but actually speaks the harsh truth of it, that's exactly what makes you realize you aren't the only one feeling this way. This fits perfectly into her third reason, outlining a completely new model for grief. A lot of times, society tries to forcefully fix the person who's grieving, right? Like rushing them through stages so they can just get back to normal. But Molly highlights that this book offers a totally fresh approach. It's a new way for grievers to actually process their pain and focus on their own healing at their own pace. It completely validates the pain rather than treating it like some problem to be solved. And, crucially, this new model also extends to how others can genuinely support grieving people without trying to just patch them up and move on. For her fourth reason, Molly points out that the book digs deep into the timeline of survival. It looks at how and why to keep going, giving you vital survival tools no matter where you are on that timeline. Whether the death of your loved one was incredibly recent, like literally the immediate shock of day one, or if it happened many, many years ago, this book meets you exactly where you are. Grief isn't something that just magically expires after a set amount of time, and Molly really appreciates that this resource acknowledges the enduring, ongoing reality of loss. And for those needing a more structured, ongoing internal outlet, Molly points out a really fascinating bonus. The author, Megan Devine, actually runs a highly recommended 30-day course called Writing Your Grief. Now, Molly admits she hasn't taken it yet because of scheduling conflicts. She actually calls it her own lame excuse, but she absolutely intends to do it eventually. That's mainly because of how much value she gets out of Devine's daily Instagram posts and, of course, the book itself. It's a real testament to how deeply the material resonates. It leaves you wanting to engage with it for a full 30 days of focused writing and healing. Okay, so having validated that internal pain and the need for personal survival tools, let's pivot and explore the external struggle. Let's see how this builds into Molly's remaining points about the very real challenge of dealing with other people. Which brings us to her second reason. Molly points out a seriously jarring contrast. You have the expectation, how Molly assumed friends and family would act, what she thought they'd say, how she assumed she'd be treated, versus the reality, which is that our culture often completely rejects grief. People say the wrong things, they act strangely, or they just completely distance themselves. Molly notes that the book explores the history of grief to explain exactly why this is such a major issue in our culture. It reassures the reader that the awkward, sometimes downright hurtful behavior of others isn't your fault. There's actually something deeply wrong with how our society as a whole looks at and deals with grief. And that brings us to the fifth reason, which is incredibly practical. Because society is just so unequipped to handle grief, you often find yourself in situations where people are saying really unhelpful things.
The book guides you through navigating these kinds of circumstances. It helps you figure out when it's actually helpful for you to try and educate the people around you about your grief, and honestly, just as importantly, when it isn't. You don't have to be a teacher to everyone you meet, and this book gives you full permission to protect your energy when you need to. The really crucial takeaway here is that this book serves a dual purpose. On one hand, for the griever, it's a literal tool for survival. It validates those overwhelming feelings of isolation and reassures you that no, you aren't going crazy when you face the weird behavior of others. But on the other hand, for the supporter, the book includes a dedicated appendix titled explicitly How to Help a Grieving Friend. It's specifically designed for friends and family to read so they actually know how best to support you, which is brilliant because it takes the burden off the griever to constantly have to explain what they need.
So, after thoroughly unpacking Molly's profound takeaways and these 5 core reasons, we arrive at the ultimate verdict and the big overarching mission behind Megan Devine's work. The ultimate takeaway from Molly's explainer is that this isn't just a book about getting through the day. As Molly beautifully puts it, Megan Devine is on a mission. She wants to change the face of grief entirely. She wants to normalize it in our culture. The goal here is to make it so that we can authentically comfort each other, really understand each other, and truly support each other whenever someone dies, instead of just falling back on awkward cliches or avoiding the topic altogether. Let's end on this critical thought. Considering the massive failures of our society's current approach to loss, how can you help normalize grief in your own circles? And thinking about the people in your life right now, whether they're currently navigating a loss or maybe trying to support someone who is, who do you know that desperately needs this lifeline today? Think about sharing these concepts with them. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep seeking out knowledge that helps us all better understand each other.